Thank you for joining us for another episode of How Men Grieve. My name's Kay Rogers, your host, and this week I am flying solo. My co-host Andrew Rogers and Aaron Adams are they're all feeling a little bit under the weather. They got a little bit of the flu, so I'm going to fly solo this week. So we've dug pretty deep in the previous episodes, and we've gotten into some pretty heavy-duty emotional pain and how we've been feeling since Nicholas's passing. We peeled back the layers a little bit, and we shared some pretty intimate feelings. And I think, through the interview process of talking it through between myself and Aaron and Andrew and his stepdad Marty, we all learned a little bit of something about each other and about ourselves and the events that happened. But we're going to change it up a little bit this week. And today, which is November 3rd, is my 48th birthday. So I thought it would be appropriate, and actually this idea was suggested by my co-host Aaron, that we all take a few minutes and we just spend a little bit of time and we talk about some of the memories we have of Nicholas and what our favorite memories would have been. And it's been overwhelming responses. We have a lot. I don't think we have enough to make the podcast an hour and a half, but we may be able to get, 20, 30 minutes in, which is fine. It'd be good to kind of share some things. And also I got a few surprises in this podcast. I think, that people will understand what they are once they start listening and they hear them. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off, and I'm going to read the first favorite memory that was given to me by his sister, Chloe. It would be his youngest sister. And she writes, when Nick would come up to my door, and due to my no boys allowed sign, he would talk in his girl's voice, so she would let him in. Then, once she did let him come in, he'd proceed to pull the heads off of all of her Barbies, and then he'd take her Polly Pocket dolls, and then he'd hide them from her. And that is exactly how Nick was. He was ornery, but he did love his little sister. And those are memories that, we cherish forever.
That is sweet.
The next one, coincidentally, comes from his oldest sister. Her name is Brittany. And what she wrote was, when she was babysitting the kids, Nicholas, Andrew, Aaron, I don't know if, Chloe too, on New Year's Eve, Nicholas was a baby, so he was still learning to poop on the potty. And he knew how to poop on the potty, but he wasn't great with wiping his own butt. So this New Year's Eve, while she was babysitting, he wiped his butt on his own for the first time. So her and Nicholas called me and her mother to share the good news. And then we made sure that once we announced that to the whole party, we all cheered for him, and then he was really excited. And that's it. That's a great memory. I remember that party. It was a really good time.
That is sweet.
The next memory that we have comes from Aaron, which is one of the co-hosts and also one of Nicholas's oldest brother. He is one of Nicholas's older brothers. And he writes, most of his favorite times with Nick were when we played video games together. We would spend hours together playing Halo, Call of Duty, and Rock Band. I've always played games, and Nick was one of the only people who was as enthusiastic as I am about playing. Hours spent laughing, yelling, and his angry screams because I never took it easy on him. He never gave up trying to beat me at Call of Duty. I'm sure he would have gotten there eventually. And I bet he probably would have, Aaron. If nothing else, at least just to say he was able to do it one time. The next memory that we're going to share is from his stepmom, Pam. And she talks about when her and I first met. Nicholas was 2 years old. And I told her when we first met that Nicholas followed me around throughout the house and just always going, Dad, 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 Dad. If nothing else, just to be near his dad. He was certainly a daddy's boy. And so Pam writes, he would follow his dad around saying, Dad, 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 Dad. And he was such a daddy's boy. Nicholas never really wanted her to read to him when he was little, but after Chloe was about 2, I would read to her and he would always want to join us. It was so cute. He never wanted to be too far away from his little sister. His favorite book was Love You Forever. When we read it, he was at his most calm. Once in a while, he would reach over and hold Chloe's hand. He really loved being a big brother to his sister and to his other little brothers. He was very proud of that.
That is sweet.
And that's something that Nick always was excited about, even though he was a little bit of a turd and aggravated the crap out of most everybody he ever came around. But that's how Nick was.
That is sweet.
The next memory that was shared with us was from his Aunt Donna. Aunt Donna wrote she had bought tickets to see Blue's Clues on ice at the Civic Center in Peoria. She had invited Nick to go with her and Sadie, which is Nick's cousin, which when he was invited, he was really excited to go. But once the day came and Aunt Donna met his mom over in Bartonville, he really didn't want to go, and he kind of threw a fit. He didn't want to get out of his mom's car, and he wouldn't go in Donna's car, and he didn't really want to go at that point. So Sadie and Aunt Donna finally convinced him to go, and him and Sadie had an absolute blast. At that time, they were ages 3 and 4, and Sadie still has that picture to this day of her and Nicholas together at that event. The next memory that's been shared came from his older brother, Andrew. And Andrew kind of struggled putting this one together. It was rough for him to write down, and I think it was kind of hard for everybody else. But, you know, the whole point about memories is the fact that that's what we have, and we need to cherish them. And every single one of us has different memories, different things. Some of them make us sad. Some of them make us glad. Some of them just kind of, happen, and we don't really think too much about them. But in this particular case, I think Andrew had a really tough time, and that's okay. We're going to have tough times. But I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. I think I've probably babbled enough. So what Andrew shares is, he writes, it's hard to just pick one memory. The many days spent at the skate park as a family, skateboarding or biking. All of the times we went camping where we'd either walk or drive the golf cart around looking for trouble or friends to play with. The couple kids I had to chew out or fight because they said or did something to Nick, despite the fact that we went out of our way to piss each other off and went at it constantly. I was the only one who could mess with him. Anybody else tried, and I was right there, 1-to-1. When we used to set up pillows and blankets behind the couch so we could run and jump over the back of the couch into them, the airsoft fight we had, and the constant pranks and chasing him through the house. There was never a dull moment with Nick around. The one that I think about most often is the night we were hanging out, just me and him, and shockingly get along. And I explained to him, no matter how much I picked on him or got mad at him, I loved him more than anything and would always be there for him. It was a very rare moment, and that's always stuck out to me. Yep, I can imagine that would. And that's one of those rare moments you cherish forever and glad you were able to have. Along those lines, I think I'm going to take this opportunity as a segue and to share one of my favorite moments with Nicholas. One of the rare moments is when him and his mother and myself had separated and we were divorcing, and I had them at the house, and I worked second shift at that time. And I remember I used to let the boys just kind of run around in their t-shirts or diapers or whatever when we were at home because they were boys. They were always getting messy, and I figured there's no sense in getting the clothes filthy dirty. But I remember one afternoon I was sitting there, and I was sitting on the floor with my kind of Indian style, which I did a lot when I was hanging with the boys and playing. And I think maybe Andrew, I don't know if he was taking a nap or what he was doing, or probably obsessed with his little finger skateboards or finger bikes, whatever it was. But I was sitting on the floor, kind of Indian style, and Nicholas kind of walked up in front of me and then turned around and then backed in very slowly and then sat down between my legs. And him and I sat there and we both promptly fell asleep and took a nap together. And those are the kind of things that, through all of Nicholas's orneriness, he would always find an opportunity to melt you like butter, and he did that regularly. In the next share that we got, it's from his cousin Whitney. Whitney wrote that when they first moved to Illinois, and they moved next door to me and Pam, her brother Keith has a issue with his sight, and he is legally blind. And so Nicholas came over to play with Keith, and Nicholas took him outside and spent a bunch of time with him, and he put him up on the skateboard and kind of walked with him on the skateboard and all those kinds of things. And Nicholas was the first kid she ever saw that never treated Keith any differently. And that really stuck with her throughout her life. That's just the kind of kid he was. He didn't see that. He just saw somebody he was going to hang out with. They were cool, and he really liked them. The next memory we had shared with us is from his grandma and grandpa, Linda and Jerry Keller. And what they said, it's very short and sweet, and it's to the point, and they're really, really correct in this, is they would just have so much fun trying to catch him, give him a hug, give him a kiss, show him some love, and Nicholas, in his typical fashion, would run away and really fight against that. So they really have that memory of how much they enjoyed doing that with him. The next story we have is from his Aunt Teresa. And his Aunt Teresa writes, her favorite memories of Nick are their days camping. One memory in particular. There was one day that Nick was being super ornery, and she told him she was going to dunk him headfirst into a bucket of rainwater that Mom and Martin, which was his grandpa, had outside their trailer. He didn't believe that she would do it, and he kept picking on everyone. So I got up, I grabbed him, and I dunked him. From that moment forward, I think he took my threats more seriously. LOL. That's from his Aunt Teresa again. The next one comes from his cousin Kaylee. His cousin Kaylee says she's got two. The first one is when they were all hanging out at the lake, which is where they all camped, and Nick was floating all by himself. It was pretty quiet until Nick yelled, "Wow, that's a low price." It was so funny. And then the second one that she has isn't really a specific situation. It would just seem like everyone, or every time, she had her hair all nice and done in a bump. I don't know what a bump is, but that's some way to do your hair. And when she thought her hair looked really good and was feeling confident, Nick would always tell me the bump looked dumb. He's a little fart nugget. The next memory that was shared, it comes from his cousin Lisa. There was this one time at the camper, we were riding around in the golf cart and Nick fell off and he got some scrapes. But Andrew and her told him not to say anything so they wouldn't get in trouble and get the golf cart taken away. Another memory that Lisa shared was also one time when we were hanging out in front of their house. Nick, Matt, which is Nicholas's brother, and I were sitting on top of my van watching Andrew skate. And Nick decided to jump off, and then when he landed, not being really hurt, he rolls around on the ground yelling, "My leg, my leg." Which, knowing Nicholas, it sounded something more like, "Ow, my leg, my leg," because he really exaggerated everything. And another one from Lisa is there was one time at Indiana Beach when he had talked to Uncle Marty and talked him into taking him a ride, not realizing what it actually did, a ride on a roller coaster, and not realizing what it actually did, and going from waving happy to scared, grabbing Uncle Marty's arm. Another memory that was shared by Kaylee, his cousin, was the time that they were at Grand Bear Lodge, and Nicholas and his cousin Nikki and Kaylee painted Nicholas's nails Barbie pink. Uncle Marty was mad, but we did it anyway. Then when we were painting his nails, we had a conversation about going to see the movie Hairspray with him. Sorry, Uncle Marty. We were painting his nails, we had a conversation about going to see the movie Hairspray with him. Sorry, Uncle Marty. The next memory comes from his Aunt Patty. Nick was out helping me pull weeds and work hard on the lake. I heard him tell Mama, which is Nicholas's grandma, "I don't need to get paid for this. This is so fun." He worked so hard. And the next memory that was shared was from his cousin Bryson. A long time ago, the whole family went to Aunt Patty's house, and I remember hanging out downstairs with Nicholas, Dallas, and I think it was some of his friends, and they talked us into trying to kick each other in the nuts. Well, if that isn't crazy boy stuff, there's nothing that is. All right, the next favorite memory that was shared was from Christine and Marty Johnson, which is Nicholas's mother and stepdad. As we know, he loved ribs. For his last birthday, I fixed ribs and mashed potatoes. I fixed 2 racks of ribs, which I thought would be plenty. As we were eating, I look over at him, and he has a huge pile of mashed potatoes and is just shucking the ribs, sticking the whole rib in his mouth and just pulling the bone out, one right after the other. Of course, we ate all the ribs, but he had me worried that I hadn't made enough. Probably should have gave him his own rack. Not to mention the huge pile of mashed potatoes. I said to him, "Nick, you'll never eat all of those," but of course he did. It is one of my fondest and funniest memories of him. This is also from Christine and Marty. I remember that on weekends that he would come out of his room with his blanket wrapped around his head and body and sit in the chair in the living room. It was really the only time he was still. He would sit there and just chill. Once he woke up, he would be in constant motion, never stopping, and always on the go. The next memory I'm going to share is from Scott and Crystal and Blake Scribner. That would be Nicholas's aunt, uncle, and cousin. I'll never forget Nick's nonstop motion. Anytime that we ever saw him, he was super busy with tons to talk about. Skateboarding like his big brothers, swimming, or trampolining, that kid never stopped. He was never one to sit around and was friendly to everyone. I'll never forget the Christmas that the boys were playing Wii and Blake walked across the baseball game while Nick was in full swing. Whack! Right in the nose and blood on the white couch. While being concerned with the bloody mess and consequent broken nose that he caused to his cousin, that little scrapper couldn't believe that he did that to his cousin who was taller and bigger than him. I know he felt awful about it and kind of proud too, but he was like, "Wow, I can't believe I broke Blake's nose." They also shared he loved toys. He was always one with Blake at birthday parties, getting Blake psyched up about whatever toys that he opened. He wanted to help him play with them all. And then another favorite memory. Blake spent the night with Nick once and came home talking about what they did. Hanging out, watching movies, especially watching The Wedding Crashers, and Nicholas fast forwarding to all the bad parts. At the time, I think the boys were 10. Helping Blake with his education, Nick was. They also write, "Forever missed. We often wonder what he would have been like at this age. No doubt a star shining bright as his smile. So thankful we had an opportunity to be part of Nick's short life." So I know this podcast isn't long, it's fairly short, but I thought it would be good to share some memories and just some of the fun stuff that Nicholas used to try to do. I probably wasn't the best narrator, but I worked through it. But anyway, I appreciate everybody listening. Please take time to review and like our page and on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever podcast platform that you're using. Please leave reviews. And I'm going to leave you guys with these next little sound bites of Nicholas.
That is